Hello and welcome to the interview. I'm your host, Pak Kyongni. They say you gain a new world when you read a book. I am curious to see what it means to writers who present their works to the world. I'm looking forward to today's interview as I will be sitting down with a renowned writer who is the master of African literature.
Kenyan writer Ngũgĩ Thiong'o is the master of African literature, and his work symbolize and shed light on post-colonialism literature. Kenya was under British colonization for a long time, and the themes resistance and decolonization stand out in his pieces. Ngũgĩ Thiong'o has frequently been regarded as a likely candidate for the Nobel Prize literature. He delivers the imagery of the minority and minor languages through his literary works. Ngũgĩ Thiong'o was recently in Korea as he was a recipient of a 6th Pak Kyongni Prize. This is an award given to writers who maintain the true value of literature and who has a profound impact on the international literature arena. Stay tuned to get a glimpse of his fervent sense of subjects, which peers through his works, and an insight of the life of a genuine writer in this edition of The Innerview.
It's my great pleasure to introduce today's guest, writer Ngũgĩ Thiong'o. I'm pleased to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice being in Korea.
Welcome to our show.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
We have the Arirang TV interacts with viewers all around the world, and I'm sure they are very excited to see you on our show. And would you like to say hello to our viewers first?
Yeah, it's nice meeting all of you, viewers, wherever you are. I'm here with my wife, Jerry Ngũgĩ. This is my second time.
It's been over 10 years since your last visit to Korea.
Yes, about 10 years actually. Yeah, I was last year in 2005. Yes, yeah, yes, yeah.
And you came to Seoul at the most beautiful time of the year. Autumn is the best time for reading.
I think people told us it might be very cold. I know why they were telling us, because California, where we come from, Irvine is always warm,
yes.
And so.
So are you enjoying your second visit to Korea this time?
Yes, very wonderful being here with my wife, so I can show her all the places I was bragging about. Although now when she asks me about the places, I don't quite remember.
Well, you have been frequently regarded as the likely candidate for Nobel Prize in literature, and you were the most likely candidate, especially this year, according to many reports. And would you mind sharing what went through your mind when the results were out?
First of all, in a sense, it was not new to me and my family, because we've been in that position for the last 4 years.
Right.
Although this time the buzz was much more concentrated than all the previous years, But I remember when the prize went to the Argentinian novelist. That night, there were camera people and journalists camping outside our house at 4 o'clock in the morning, a.m. So when the news came then, they looked very disappointed. And my wife had to invite them in to the house and made them coffee and consoled them. But for me, for me personally, I really appreciate the fact that there are so many people in the world who think that my work is worth the Nobel Prize or any other prize for that matter. However, having said that, let me say that the prize which I'm getting in South Korea is to me very special and very personal.
Yes, you came to Korea for a special reason this time.
Yes.
You are the recipient of the 2016 Pak Kyongni Literary Award.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And how do you feel?
Oh, great.
And I saw the selection criteria for the Pak Kyongni Literary Award. And it said that it's an International Writers Award for genuine writer who maintains a true value of literature and has a profound impact on international literature. And they said that value of literature, and I'd like to ask you, what would be the literature value that you would like to maintain and protect?
Yeah, first of all, art connects.
Art connects.
Connects. And that's what's very important to me. The idea that, languages, cultures, peoples are really connected much more than we like to say or to realize. Yeah. So the recognition of my work in terms of the international dimension of the work, that's very precious, to me. But one thing, I think all art, including my work, is a product of imagination.
Product of imagination.
Yeah. But imagination also needs to eat, to be fed, right? So art, which is a product of imagination, is also what nourishes the imagination.
Right.
So I'm very happy when my work contributes to the
Nourishing the imagination
of many people
right.
across cultures and languages.
It's a positive circle where.
Yeah, right.
Your works reflect Kenyan history, and the history of Kenya is reminiscent of Korean modern history as well. And although Kenya is on a different continent and on the other side of the earth, it's not very difficult for us Koreans to relate to Kenya because of the similarities that we share in modern history. And I'm so excited to talk all about this. And let's continue our conversation after this short video clip.
Ngũgĩ Thiong'o visited Korea to attend the award ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ngũgĩ Thiong'o.
Ngũgĩ Thiong'o, who showed resistance through his works, is a recipient of the 6th Pak Kyongni Prize, an award which is presented to a true writer of this era.
응국이와 시홍호는 큰 선으로 그리고 있어요. 역사적인 사건들을. 그렇지만 또 한편으로는 공동체에 대한 사랑도 있고 정의에 대한 그런 열망을 담으면서 인물들을 아주 세심하게 그려내고 있습니다.
Father, how can you continue working for the man who took your land? How can you serve such a person? Weep Not, Child is Ngũgĩ Thiong'o's first novel. This novel was published in 1964. It was the first novel in English to be published by a writer from East Africa. This land belongs to the Kenyans. No one has the right to sell or purchase it. Think about the white settlers. They own hundreds of acres of land. Then what about black people who only receive 10 shillings after working non-stop for a month? A Grain of Wheat is another representative work by Ngũgĩ Thiong'o, and it gives a clear description of Kenyans who were exploited by imperialism. After 1895, European colonists destroyed our agriculture. First, they took our land, then our work. Next, they stole our wealth like cows and goats. Then they took away our capital through taxes. One primary outlining theme of this novel is the failure of the ruling Kenyan elite to adequately meet the needs of the people. This work plays Ngũgĩ Thiong'o's behind bars and was his last work in English. We labourers don't have homes, villages. We even don't have a country. We can say this land is our home, But one thing that doesn't change is the fact that we constructed this land. So how can we give up our land and let the devil and the weak ghost and their followers do whatever they want? Through Devil on the Cross, Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o began writing all of his works in Kikuyu, which is a native language and not in English. His novel is considered an important factor in the literary world, and it deals with a diverse range of literary conventions and themes, focusing on politically challenging the role of the international money and culture in Kenya.
I think it's very important to understand where the writer comes from. You're born in communist Kenya. And could you tell us what your hometown was like and what your memories were?
Yeah, let me say, I was born in Kameredo, Limuru, Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Limuru is like a small rural town, which was about 20 or 30 kilometers from the main, from the capital city, of Nairobi. I was born in 1938.
1938.
1938.
Right.
A very important year because that was on the eve of the Second World War.
That's right.
So my youth was, I grew
Started
up,
out as a war.
yeah, with the war, surrounded by visuals of the war, with soldiers, going to fight, and the Italian prisoners of war, were part of what I saw when I was growing up. And then came 1952, when there was also Mau Mau led war against the British colonial state in Kenya. So again, that was 1950, I was about 8 to 10 years. So my youth, my childhood and early youth, where I was impacted by war and gunfires,
right.
and death and blood and cries and all sorts of things. Yes, yeah.
But what about your childhood? You had a quite loving mother, right?
Yes, my mother was very important in my life. She sent me to school, and for many years she supervised my homework, and I did not know that she could not read or write. But she had a way of asking questions in such a way that she knew exactly how I was doing in school. And then what I remember most is when I came home and I would tell her, oh, I got 100%. She asked, how did you do? Got 100% or 10 out of 10. Then she'd ask me, is that the best you could have done? So the question of the best became ingrained in my mind. Okay. I've talked about this in my memoir, actually, Dreams in a Time of War.
In the time of war.
Yes,
right.
yeah.
So how did all those memories have influenced you in your literary work later on?
I grew up in a household, we were quite a large family, where people told stories in the evening. So my first introduction to literature really is through oral literature, or what we call orature today, right?
Oral tradition.
Yes, the oral tradition, the storytelling in the evening. And
it must have been very fun.
Yeah, oh yes,
Right?
every evening. So I always looked forward to.
I'm wondering, what kind of story did your mother tell you?
Oh,
It's like old stories from...
Old stories, elephants, birds, they have one thing which is very, very important. That they are very much aware of the interconnectedness of nature.
Of nature.
Yeah. In all stories, birds, animals, trees, humans, they interact.
They're all parts of the
Sometimes they
story.
even talk
Right.
to each other.
Right.
Right? So those stories were very much more aware of the interconnectedness of nature than probably we are today. So we have a lot to, even today I feel there's a lot to learn from the oral tradition.
Strong oral tradition.
Yes, you know, and all oral cultures have that sense that nature and life is interconnected, both in terms of time, but also in space. Yeah.
Your novel, Weep Not Child, which was published in 1964, is a vivid depiction for Mau Mau uprising. And what did you want to convey with that work to the world?
You know, first of all, let me just put this in a context. Weep Not Child was actually my second novel. My first novel was The River Between.
River Between.
River Between.
Yes.
And I wrote both novels when I was a second-year student at Makerere University College in Uganda, which was then an overseas college, or the University of London. Now, let me put another context. Both my novels are set in Kenya, where I come from. And Kenya was a British settler colony between 1895 to 1963, when we got our independence, but through struggle led by Mau Mau, otherwise known as Land and Freedom Army. So in writing my two novels, I was trying to understand that history of struggle against the colonial state. But more important, what it meant to people going through both the pressures of the colonial state, but also pressures of having to fight against the colonial state. Yes.
Many critics selected A Grain of Wheat a masterpiece, and that novel employs, I think, the different narrative style with multiple characters. And could you explain a little more about your work?
Yeah, two things. My first two novels, Weep Not Child and The River Between, employed what I like to call the linear development of plot.
Story. Right.
You know, one major character, and where events unfold in a linear way. When I came to do A Grain of Wheat, I was no longer satisfied with the linear development of plot. So there are now multiple characters, multiple spaces, and multiple time periods. So it's like this. The same event seen by the same character at a different time has a different perspective. So sometimes it's very interesting to compare how one saw the event in one place, one time, and how they see it. The same event from another time, another place, or how different people narrate the same event to different people at different times. It was a much more challenging structure, but actually very, very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
sounds very interesting.
Very interesting indeed. Yes. Yeah.
In 1963, Kenya gained independence, and upon independence, you immerse yourself in the eradication of illiteracy in Kenya and also drama movements. And could you elaborate your activities back then and what it meant to you?
Yeah, two things happened very, very quickly. You know, yeah, we regained our independence in 1963. You know, I left Makerere University College, went to England for higher studies, came back and became a professor of literature at the University of Nairobi. By then, other things changes were taking place in Kenya, but not always, in my view, to the betterment. Some good things happened, don't get me wrong. Very good things happened, some not so good things happened. But as a writer, I want to portray both. But later, I did move to the village to work on literacy program. That was 1977. And also developing community theater in my mother tongue, on my own language, okay, at a place called Camiredo Community Education and Cultural Center. That was 1976 to 1977. Yeah.
77,
Yeah.
right.
And I wrote my first play in Gikuyu called Gahikadeda, I'll Marry When I Want. As a result of which, I was arrested
And then imprisoned.
and then put in a maximum security
Right.
prison in December 1977. Yes.
Well, you once said that colonialism normalizes the abnormal, right? But even after the independence, the abnormal state just lingered on, and then that's probably why you focused on this enduring subject of injustice and struggle.
Right. Okay, let me give you a few examples of what I mean by the colonialism normalizing the abnormal. For instance, in every colonial situation, they force you to, the language of the colonizer becomes your normal language of intellectual production, right? But that's abnormal. The normal thing is you start with your own language, whatever it is, and then you add to that language or what you know. So once again, when it comes to language, is abnormal turned into normality. So everything about a colonial situation turns what is abnormal into the normal. And what I found that in a post-colonial state, that abnormality of the colonial state and arrangements became normality.
Normality.
Or rather, it was Africanized.
Africanized.
Yeah, right.
So in 1977, you wrote Petals of Blood. It's a
Yeah.
very strong title, actually.
Yeah, Petals of Blood, yes.
What did you want to say to the world with this work?
Petals of Blood, I think, follows the way of writing that had started with A Grain of Wheat. Okay. Actually, Petals of Blood is very interesting because actually there's started in America, a lot of it written in Kenya,
But
finished in touches
Czech.
in Eota,
Right.
where, and Eota has another history and so on, yeah. So, Petals of Blood, I would say, is really a continuation of the kind of issues I was developing in A Grain of Wheat. Some of the themes. And even the method of narration is really more a development of what I had started in A Grain of Wheat. But once again, mostly questioning the abnormality that I saw in the post-colonial state. Yeah.
And did it lead to your incarceration?
It was not just the novel Petals of Blood, it was also the work I was doing in African language theater in Camiredo, when we produced a play called I'll Marry When I Want, or Gahikadeda in Gikuyu, okay? That play was in my mother tongue, in a Gikuyu language, and it was acted by regular people. By regular people, I mean small farmers, landless people, factory workers, plantation workers, sort of, and we produced a drama of very high quality. But the government of the time did not like either what we were saying or the manner of saying it or involving people in a critical discussion of the post-colonial state. So on December 31st, 1967, I found myself from being professor of literature and chairperson of the Department of Literature at the University of Nairobi into a prisoner without a name.
Without a name.
A prisoner without a name in a maximum security prison. Yeah.
With numbers, maybe.
With numbers, yeah. I had numbers, yeah. Something, yeah, right.
And then you wrote even in prison.
In prison, that's why I've been saying that this prize which I'm getting is very, very important. Because it brings all those memories. Before my imprisonment, I'd found the work of Kim Ji-ha at Tokyo Hotel, which I took back to Nairobi and became a text in the literature syllabus of the University
of Nairobi, right?
Now, when I was in prison and I started writing for survival, because in prison I was not allowed paper, no pen, nothing, and no radio, books. You had to survive. So writing was very, very important for me. But I also decided that since I had been put in prison for writing a play in a Gikuyu language, I would now use prison to write a novel in Gikuyu in a very language which had been the basis of my incarceration.
Right.
So it's a way of defiance, it's a way of spiritual defiance. But guess who became very important to me? Then, Kim Ji-ha's poem, The Five Bandits. Yeah. So I wrote Devil on the Cross on toilet paper.
Yes, I'm very impressed to hear that. You even during incarceration, you found means to write, and you never stopped writing. Let's look at the video footage before we go on.
On a crisp autumn day, Ngũgĩ Thiong'o, a veteran novelist of American literature, spent some meaningful time with students at a university in Seoul. What did the 78-year-old writer want to share with Korean youngsters?
Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Ngũgĩ Thiong'o.
There is a sense of kinship between Kenya and Korea, as both nations were colonies and had experienced a literary era. Ngũgĩ Thiong'o stressed the importance of language in expressing literature.
All languages in the world, big and small, have a lot to contribute to our common human cultures and the enrichment of all our lives. Languages and cultures can relate and should relate in terms of network, not hierarchy. A network is a system of equal give and take. This is what literature can teach the world.
Many were waiting for him once the lecture ended. The attendees of the lecture had a chance to think about the power of languages, the relationship between languages, and how influential culture really is.
모든 언어가 그 자신만의 독특한 문화랑 그 가치를 지니고 있기 때문에 동등하다 했던 점이 가장 인상 깊게 와닿았는데.
There's one thing that is said about translation. The translation is the common language of language. I think that is a very powerful statement. It shows that you can express yourself in whatever language it is, but it can reach so many millions across the world because it can always be translated.
Self-empowerment, self-realization 위해서 그 로컬 랭귀지들 어떻게 더 잘 사용할 수 있을지, 어떻게 그런 것들을 통해서 어떤 문화 간의 권력 관계를 해체하고 조금 더 평등하고 협력적인 관계로 문화들의 교류가 이어질 수 있을지 좀 생각한 게 되는 계기였던 것 같습니다.
The welcome was great. The students seemed to be well read. Some had read African literature. They asked good questions and very involved questions. So altogether, I was very pleased and very impressed with the students here. Even within our own individualities as cultures and nations and individuals, we are connected to other people and other cultures, And I think it's very important for us to see that universality which is in every one of us, the universality of our being human.
Your novel, Devil on the Cross, was recently translated and published in Korea. And that is the first novel, modern novel, written in Gikuyu. And it is also written in prison in toilet paper, right?
Right.
And what did you want to convey with this work?
I was trying to, earlier we were talking about abnormality of the post-colonial state. No, turning abnormality into normality. This is what I was trying to dramatize in the novel, Devil on the Cross.
And that's written in Gikuyu. And what made you decide to?
I wrote in Gikuyu. What happened was that when I was in prison, I started thinking about why I had been put in prison. And one of the reasons is, although they did not say it, but it was clear to me, was because of the play which I had written in Gikuyu. So for me, writing in Gikuyu in prison was an act of survival, of defiance. But it was a very important decision that I made in prison. Yeah.
But you wrote all your novels in Kikuyu since then.
Since then, I've written all my novels, including of course, Devil on the Cross. Then I wrote another one, Matigari, and the biggest in terms of size anyway, Wizard of the Crow in Gikuyu. Yes.
But how do you keep fluency in Kikuyu when you're, despite your physical distance from Kenya? And how do you feel Kenya outside Kenya all the time?
Writing for me is my way of connecting with Kenya. Remember, my first two novels were written when I was in Uganda, not in Kenya. I was in Uganda at the time. So it's as if being away from Kenya becomes a challenge. And my desire to connect with Kenya help excite my imagination. Yeah.
You think in Kikuyu a lot?
Not all the time, because I'm surrounded. First of all, I'm a distinguished professor of English and comparative literature at the University of California, Irvine. So my work is within English language. So you see, my creative work, novels, drama, and poetry, I write them, but in an environment in which I use English all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to understand you better, I believe we should understand also the concept of decolonizing the mind, which is also the title of your book, and there's a concept that you have been concentrated on.
Yeah.
And could you explain about this concept for our viewers?
That, again, the ideas of that book started when I was in prison in 1978, because that's when I started thinking about the entire relation between the colonizer and colonized as far as language is concerned. And I realized in all colonized societies, the colonizing agents always imposed their language on the colonized. Right. So that's very important for me. So those, and I look at Japan, I look at other places, and the same thing. So the result of that thinking was the book that can be called Decolonizing the Mind, which I published in 1985, I believe, and which has become one of my most popular academic books all over the world.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
In various interviews, you revealed that The Devil on the Cross was inspired by the Korean poem Five Bandits written by Kim Ji-ha. And what kind of connection did you feel with him?
Two things. One, the conditions he was describing in the Five Bandits seemed to me to reflect what was beginning to happen in Kenya, in the post-colonial state in Kenya, or after independence. So the parallels were, oh my God, I thought, oh no, this guy, he's not writing about Korea, he's writing about Kenya. That's how it came across to me. But the other thing which really fascinated me was his use of, both in the ground rumors and also in Five Bandits, his use of Korean forms of orality, drawn from the folkloric tradition of Korean culture and so on. That's also very important. So both in form and content, his work had impact on me.
Well, you paid a big price for accusing neocolonialism in Kenya, and you were forced to put in exile since 1982. And could you share the story about what your life has been like since then?
Yeah, first of all, it makes it clear. I was in forced exile between 1982 and the year 2003. That's when the regime we had in Kenya was very, very repressive. But since then, I can return to Kenya. And in fact, last year, the current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, received me in State House, or the government house in Kenya. And that was a gesture of reconciliation. Since I try to connect with Kenya, I use my conditions of exile to connect with Kenya.
But in 2004, you tried to return home only to face some horrific incidents.
Yes, and this was the first time I was returning to Kenya after being away. By then we had a change of government, a new government, a bit more democratic and so on, you know. But in a hotel in Nairobi, we were attacked by 4 armed gunmen.
Oh my God.
It was a scary moment. We just barely escaped with our lives. It was a horrible experience, both for me and my wife, who was assaulted also by the gunmen.
I introduced you in the opening as a master of African literature. And many people, not just Korea, many nations are interested in the continent, Africa. What do you think is a homework for African literature in 21st century?
African languages.
African languages.
That's the key. And you know the reason why? Because up to now, many African writers and intellectuals do their intellectual production in European languages. We need this talent from the continent to develop also the talent which is inherent, which is there in African languages. That's the real task we have.
Your task at hand.
Yes, the task at hand.
Yes.
And the challenge.
In challenge. In one interview, you left a strong impression by your comment. A writer is a doctor of the heart. And I believe a calling is necessary for such an occupation. And what are your thoughts on your life as a writer?
For me as a writer, I'm always very moved when I come across people, readers, anywhere in the world, and they say, your work affected me in this or that way. That's a very good feeling.
So you're happy that 5 of your children are writers?
Oh yes, I've got, oh yes. Now, I think I told you I've got 9 children
9 children, and
altogether.
5 of them are writers.
5 of them are published.
Writers, yes.
5 of them are published writers.
Yes.
Yeah, right, and I'm of course very happy. I don't force them to become writers, but they become writers. And the other thing is, they don't write in Gikuyu, but so you're having these debates at home also, you know, about writing in what language. Well,
I'm sure that you've inspired so many of our viewers tuning in today. And would you like to say a few words for our viewers, and especially for those who would like to follow into your footsteps?
Yeah, first of all, let me just say this. Of course, I come from a storytelling tradition, and at home, I've tried to maintain that storytelling tradition.
Maybe you taught them as your mother taught you.
The storytelling has been part of that tradition at home, that's for sure, you know, and you know, and like Mukoma Wangu, one of the writers, his novel Nairobi Heat, actually in translation in Germany became a bestseller in Germany.
Really?
So my son Mukoma Wangu is better known in Germany than
really?
I am. Yeah. When I go in Germany, they call me the father. To make the people know me, they say there's a father of Mukoma.
You look very happy talking about your children.
Yeah, it's exciting to have a writing family around.
Yes. Well, we now have to bid you farewell on the interview. And it's been a great honor and pleasure having you on our show. And thank you very much for talking with us today.
Thank you. I really like being in Korea.